Hello, and welcome to this presentation on the analysis into the correlation between the indic theory of reincarnation and the law of karma on human psychological behaviors. So, psychology is the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior. It includes both the conscious and the unconscious phenomena, including thoughts and feelings. As an academic discipline, its theories are based on the qualitative and quantitative research of human behavior. As proposed by modern psychology, human behavior and experiences such as emotions, perception, cognition, attention, intelligence, personality, motivation, and subjective experiences are an emergent property of the brain, as consciousness is assumed to be a product of the brain's neurochemistry. An objective study is under a dilemma to explain the variety in human psychology. A purely materialistic understanding is insufficient. In contrast, the concept of reincarnation, found in all dharmic religions, in particular Sanatana Dharma, proposes the idea of three bodies, in which the causal and subtle bodies, with the reflected consciousness, the Atman, as the Jivatman, the sentient being, transmigrate to inhabit different gross bodies according to their respective karmas. The effects of karmas generate experiences and interactions with the physical world, which are imprinted as sanskars or impressions within the subconscious, which can manifest in future lives, as will be seen in the rest of this presentation. Due to different karmas and hence different causes and effects for different jivas, various samskaras are formed, which can explain the diversity of character traits, personalities, inequality of birth, and the differed experience of each sentient being. So, according to Vedanta, the essence of every living entity is the changeless and the attribute-less Atman, the Self, which is ultimately identical to its macrocosm, Brahman, the ultimate reality. Due to the influence of avidya, ignorance, the sentient being, the Jivatma, becomes identified with the body and mind it's associated with. This leads to its identification with three bodies. The first is the Sthula Sharira, the gross body. This is the material and transient body, which performs actions and enjoys gross objects and experiences. The second is the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body. This is responsible for the maintenance of the cognitive faculties, personality, and vitality of the being. It's composed of the Pancha Karmendriya, the five organs of action, Pancha Jnanendriya, the five organs of perception, Pancha Prana, the five vital airs, Manas, the mind, Buddhi, intellect, Chit, memory, and Ahankar, which is ego. The latter four are collectively referred to as the Antahakarana, the internal organ, which is involved in the entire psychological process. The Chitta, as we shall see later, becomes a long-term store for the impressions of experienced objects as referred to this shlok of the Gita. The Karanashira, the causal body, the third one, is the seed or cause of both the subtle and gross bodies. It contains an account of all the past karmas and their impressions in a potential form. When one's karmas for a particular life become exhausted, the subtle and the causal bodies associated with that particular jiva transmigrate to different realms and different life forms. So the subtle and causal bodies are appearances of the Atman itself, which is a localization of Brahman. Now, that reflection, which is referred to as the Chidabhas of the Atman, occurs within these bodies as the sentient being, the Jivatman. An analogy is given. The sun is reflected within many pots containing water, just like one Atman is expressed in many bodies. When one pot breaks, its water can be carried over into another pot, in which the reflection of the sun reappears. Similarly, when the gross body dies, the other two bodies inhabit another body, in which the Atman is re-expressed. Now, how does karma come about in this entire process? So, the ignorance, avidya, of one's essential nature as the self leads to desire, karma, of external sense objects, and this leads to actions, karma, to obtain these objects. The doctrine of karma is based on the law of cause and effect. For every action, karma, there is a corresponding effect, the phala. There are hidden variables which can influence the outcome of an action, and so actions yield unexpected results. Actions can be done through thoughts, words, physical acts, and instructions imparted by others. The outcome of one's actions depends jointly on human effort in the present and the effects of previous actions. The jiva can act, but the outcome depends on these factors. So, now a doubt may arise as to the beginning of the first karma, but there is no such thing. Vedanta defines the power of appearance, Maya, as being beginningless, and so it has an end when the jiva attains liberation, which is the recognition of its identity with Brahman. Now, Brahman exists beyond time, space, causation. Names and forms occur after creation comes into being. At the end of the universe, all the jivas and their karmas are in a potential state. When a new universe begins, all the jivas with their karmas from a prior cycle of creation become manifest. As there have been infinite universes, a jiva has had an infinite number of previous births in which infinite karmas were performed. Hence, the law of karma and their associated impressions on one's psychology continues from one cycle of creation to the next. So, there are different types of karma. Let's look at the first type, which is sanchita karma. This is the accumulated karma of previous lives, which are stored in the causal body as impressions that we will see later on. The second is Prarabdha Karma, which is a portion of the Sanchita Karma which manifests as a present life. This portion appears in the form of one's body, appearance, the family of birth, intelligence, one's psychological framework, and events which occur in the present life, etc. When the Prarabdha Karma is exhausted, one quits the body and continues the journey in another form, carrying these impressions. This type of karma is stored in the chitta, which is the memory center of impressions of the subtle body. The third type is the kriyamana or the agami. So these are all the actions performed in the present life, which are yet to bear fruit in this life or perhaps the next. This type of karma can affect the karmic current, which has been set into motion by the prarabdha karma already. This kriyaman karma is first stored in the chitta as impressions, and then later becomes consolidated as sanchita karma in the Karanashira, as we shall see now. So, where do impressions fit in? So, samskaras are mental impressions, psychological imprints, or recollections which manifest as habits, behaviors, tendencies, and predispositions across the lives of a being, which can explain our psychological framework. The mind is composed of the jna, conscious, and the ajna, the unconscious. The imprints made from previous lifetimes deeply embedded in the unconscious mind can manifest in any future life. Past experiences from the store of samskaras can be resurfaced with or without external stimuli. When a past vritti, which is a thought wave, is resurfaced to the conscious mind, manas, it is referred to as memory or smriti. Samskaras can explain why one knows or remembers anything, expects certain outcomes, experiences fulfillment, frustration, freedom, suffering, or boredom. Actions, experiences, and internal thoughts can trigger samskaras, which in turn can influence the ability to act, perceive, and respond to circumstances. Every karma leaves an impression, which latently awaits fruition in the chitta. Either by stimuli or at random, it manifests as tendencies or innate dispositions. When a vritti arises from a previous sanskara, the individual may hold on to it in the form of a thought, action, or experience. This thought then re enters the chitta, and that particular samskara is strengthened, along with the generation of new samskaras. This strengthened sanskara has the potential to form a new vritti, which leads to the cyclical nature of samskaras and vrittis. The strengthening of these samskaras can lead to the establishment of certain psychological inclinations. Upon birth, as explained before, a portion of one sanchita karma becomes the prarabdha karma. The samskaras associated with these karmas are lodged into the chitta. One gathers more samskaras through actions, which become embedded within the accumulated store of the sanchita karma in the causal body. Previous samskaras can lead to vasanas, which are um, tendencies to enjoy sense objects or activities, and these experiences can lead to action, and which manifest in results later on, and then which fortify as impressions. And so this never-ending cyclical rotation of vasanas and sanskaras entangles the jiva in the cycle of samsara. And so actions basically can lead to impressions, which can become solidified as desires or tendencies, predisposing one to particular activities and mental modes. So now let's look at the evidence for reincarnation. One of the most logical um, explanations comes from the Nyaya Sutras of the Nyaya school, the school of logic. And it makes a logical argument for the continuation of experiences and memories from one life to the next. Instinctive behaviors in a newborn child are inexplicable unless we suppose that the child perceiving certain things in this life remembers the corresponding things of a past life. The things which excited joy, fear, and grief in the past life continue to do so in this life. The memory of the past proves a previous birth and the existence of the self. A reference to the continuation of desires and impressions from one life to the next has been made in the Shatapatha Brahmana as well. So, what about the current evidence for reincarnation based on scientific studies? So, in 1968, a late Virginia psychiatrist, Dr. Ian Stevenson, conducted research on reincarnation based on the studies of children aged 4 to 10, based on their memories of previous lives. He investigated around 3 to 4,000 cases from across the world by matching statements given by children with actual historical figures and events. These cases would not be explained by rational and non paranormal means, despite his attempt to disregard reincarnation as an explanation. In 1997, he published Reincarnation in Biology, which contained 225 case studies of children with past life memories, along with physical anomalies corresponding to past births, such as abnormal birthmarks, scars, limb deformities, etc., which corresponded with the wounds with from the deaths of those children in previous lives. He found many patterns of these memories on children regarding their previous lives. He saw that there was only a brief window of time between the ages of 2 and 5 in which some of these children retained these past life memories to some level of detail. He saw that only 1 in 500 children retained any memories of a previous life. He hypothesized a correlation between strong emotions in the present life and retention of previous lives by the child. The nature of death, such as a traumatic end, may have resulted in emotional imprints. He saw that habits and fears possessed by the child in the present life may have been linked to the nature of death in the past. For example, those who were drowned in their previous lives had aquaphobia, and those who were stabbed in violent murders had a fear of sharp objects. Now, there seems to be a correlation and perhaps a causal link between reincarnation and the effect on a present life. The continuation of such memories, the manifestation of phobias, and the presence of birthmarks from this research agrees with the Nyaya Sutra that we saw earlier, that the experiences and memories are stored in a subtle body, which are recollected in some individuals during their younger ages. This has also been witnessed in our itihasas, such as the Mahabharata, in which the character of the Prince Shikandin recollects the memory of his former birth as the Princess Amba since birth, as per the boon of Lord Shiva. As a result of karma, that which is experienced on the gross body in a former life seems to be stored in the subtle and causal bodies and is expressed as birth defects and phobias in future lives. Positive, negative, and mixed past life experiences are expressed as a variety of personality traits and attitudes. So, in recent times, a psychologist and a past life therapist called Dr. Barbara K. Foltz in her book Hidden Treasures from Past Lives explores the ways in which past lives have the ability to impact current lives. As her beliefs, a former life affects one's thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, and attitudes. She refers to these impressions of former experiences as legacies. A legacy can be any unexplained symptom, physical, mental, emotional, that is out of context within your general life, which may present randomly at any time. A legacy can become a portion of your personality and is the stimulus for your behavior. She proposes many indications of the experience of a legacy in our current lives and how they can correspond with events in a former existence, as we can see on the slide here. So, based on these definitions, the concept of a legacy bears great similarity with the yogic and Vedantic concept of samskaras. So, a person's characteristics, inclinations, and aversions can be strengthened or dissolved depending on the environment. For example, a person with a previous inclination towards music in a former life is likely to pursue this trait if musical instruments and favorable parents are present to manifest this potential. However, depending on the strength of the samskara, it may manifest regardless of this environment. Prodigies such as Mozart, Beethoven, Newton, etc., may have manifested their technical and educational abilities as a result of practicing similar disciplines in a former birth. Also, as there is little evidence of a genetic component in psychological disorders such as schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, anxiety, depression, etc., we can apply it to this field too. This claim can overcome the theories put forward by Freud and other psychologists on trauma and personality traits as solely being a result of childhood experiences. Our personalities also differ immensely, even within one's own family. There may be fixed traits since birth or early childhood, such as introversion, extroversion, virtues, and vices, which may not align with the environmental exposure in the home and during one's upbringing in general, such as the school environment. The manifestation of samskaras from a former birth may be more plausible to explain this. In addition to these categories, a category which is not yet fully understood by science, yet is manifesting in common culture, is that of the spectrum of alternative genders and sexualities. A sexual preference for one or more genders may be due to perhaps a result of closeness between people of one or more sexes in a former life. Across multiple lives, a jiva may have to change genders frequently. For example, if one inhabits the gross body of a female for multiple lives, one may suddenly be born with a male gross body. And so there is a disjoint between strong impressions of femininity on the subtle body, and this may explain gender dysphoria. Again, all of these fields are, need to be researched in further detail in order to prove some sort of causal link, if not correlation. So, due to these findings that we have explored in this presentation, it has been analyzed that such recollection of previous experiences can be possible due to the traumatic nature of an individual's demise in a former life. This can account for the possibility of reincarnation, explaining the multitude of neuropsychological presentations in terms of personality traits and inclinations, psychological disorders, and even gender and sexual preferences in all humans. A further investigation into the mechanism of reincarnation can perhaps be possible with the study of the nature of consciousness being a non physical phenomenon which is not generated by the body. As Dr. Ian Stevenson claims in this quote, that we may one day be able to understand the nature and mechanism of reincarnation itself. Larger case studies and a statistical analysis into the nature of causality, karma, of past life memories, personality traits, disorders, and orientations across the world can present a stronger case for reincarnation. And so our dharmic wisdom can be shared across the world and can be validated and utilized within the framework of modern psychology to further the research and developments to improve the of qualities of lives of many people across the world. Thank you for listening. Namaste.